Welcome, superstar. In this video, I'm going to share how to have a spiritual awakening, a guide for atheists, agnostics, and overachievers. In this video, I'm going to first cover what does it even mean to have a spiritual awakening. Then I'm going to talk about the particular problem that atheists, agnostics, and overachievers face when they want to embark on this journey. I'll share with you a little bit about my story, and then ultimately 9 what I call access portals for spiritual awakening, which you can try one, some, or all of them. So first, what does it even mean to have a spiritual awakening? For me, my definition of that is to feel a connection to something greater than yourself, to some higher power, to some divine purpose, to your own higher self, but something that's more than just the tangible, concrete reality of the day-to-day. In my world, I look at that as requiring a type of radical self-leadership that's rooted in 2 main things: truth and love. It's about finding the universal connections between everything and everyone, what unites us rather than what divides us. Now, that's just my personal opinion, and I'm no spiritual guru or spiritual leader or anything. But what I found in my own life and with my clients too is that when there's something beyond the day-to-day, it can give more meaning, more purpose, more joy to life. As an ex-atheist / agnostic / overachiever myself, I know what it's like to live a life without these types of principles. Now, the particular problem that people like that and people like perhaps you and like I was face is that when we decide that we want to embark on a spiritual awakening, or we want to open up to these new ways of being and believing, we can want to get it right. We have this sometimes, especially for atheists and agnostics like I used to be, this desire to understand, this desire to have a rational knowing, to figure it out. And what I've discovered is that there is no figuring this out, really. There's just experiencing. There's just opening to it and being curious and exploring it. And that's why it can be challenging for someone with a very rational, rigid belief system to open up to these new realms, because so much of it is just impossible to explain or describe or understand. So if that's you right now, all I suggest you do is just put that aside for a moment and be open. Consider that there may be more to life than you've experienced, than you believe, than you know, and just consider the possibility, right? And stay open to that. Another thing that we run into, especially with the overachievers, is the desire to do it fast. Like, all right, what are the steps? Let me jump to it. Let's do it like homework. Check, check, check. This is not one of those things that you can really approach that way. Yes, there are principles, there are principles you can learn, practices that you can implement, and it's going to unfold as it unfolds. And I invite you to consider that however it unfolds is perfect. So in a nutshell, my own story is that I was a die-hard, hardcore atheist from the time I was about 19 years old. I basically said, this spirituality thing, there's nothing to it. It's all ways that we used to explain science. And science is the new religion. Science is where it's at. And I lived that way from 19 to about 39 years old until I had an experience. Without going into too much detail, I had what I call my dark night of the soul. I went all the way down, had a breakdown. Everything in my life fell apart all at once. My romantic life, my business, my health, all of the things that I had anchored my value, my sense of self-worth, my sense of life to, all kind of started to dissolve, or at least the way that they used to be. My concept of them dissolved. And in the process, I came across a mentor who invited me to open up to something bigger, something beyond. And as they say, there are no atheists in foxholes, right? Sure enough, over time, over years really, what unfolded was faith. in a new, not faith in like the God of my childhood, what I call Santa God, right? The old man in heaven with the beard, with the tablets, right? That's not what I rediscovered, but I did rediscover or discover a new connection to something greater, something deeper, something beyond. And I call that universal spirit. Sometimes I call it the divine. I also call it source. Sometimes I'll call it the field because it also relates to science, interestingly enough. But I'm not going to get into that in this video. But if you want to dive into that rabbit hole, you can find some of my other videos about quantum science, law of attraction, the field, the 0-point field. For now, I'll just say that my breakdown was what opened me up to this new realm of possibility, and now it's a huge part of my life. I invite you to join me on this journey to talk about the 9 access portals to a spiritual awakening or just greater spiritual awareness. So these 9 access portals are a combination of mind, body, soul, heart. They're different ways in, and because everybody is different. And what I discovered for myself, I had a certain path to my quote unquote awakening. I really sometimes hesitate to use that term because it's so loaded with meaning already, but it's truly how I feel of what happened to me. I did awaken to a new life and to a new world. It's a combination of these different ways in, and I believe that a true awakening involves all of the senses, all of these areas, all of these modalities. What I've noticed is some people need to feel it first and then they'll believe it. Some people need to believe it first and then they can feel it. These portals are not in any specific order. They're just, possibilities. Give them a shot. So the first access portal to a spiritual awakening is what I did, is have a breakdown. Now, I know that you don't want to actually actively go out and say, okay, I'm going to go have a breakdown, but maybe you're already in one. Don't fight it. A breakdown can be an incredible access point into higher levels of consciousness. When we break down, like I did, when we break down, we often shed old beliefs. We see the world in a new way. We let go of things. We release emotion and have a catharsis. Go ahead and have that journey. If that's where you are, or you're on the brink of one, let yourself let go and dive into that discomfort. Number 2 is lean into emotion. This is the heart access to some sort of awakening, which is to open yourself up to being vulnerable, to being seen, to being served, to being supported, loved, to greater intimacy. And one of the things I like to say is to allow the emotions, whatever they are, to move through you like a wave. This is a concept that I learned from one of my mentors, Nani Leah Diamond. She created something called Sacred Feminine Leadership. And in her work, in her teachings, emotion is a wave that we can allow to move through us. And when the wave moves through us, it moves energy and it opens us up to new possibilities, to new ideas, to new feelings, to new truths. The third way is through meditation and prayer. Meditation and prayer came a little bit later in the process for me, but what I've seen with others is that it can be the first step into the process. And what meditation does, what prayer does, is generally it just creates stillness, slows us down, and then opens us up to the observer, that part of us that isn't hooked into reality, that greater part of us that is the observer that's able to see how we're being and observe us from more of a neutral distance. You might call that observer your higher self, your best self. But essentially, meditation and prayer are ways of slowing down, helping us to disconnect from the concrete, tangible, rational world and breathe and move energy through us and be open to new sensations, new ideas, new thoughts, new possibilities. The fourth, and something that I discovered pretty early on in my journey, was yoga. A lot of people take on yoga like an exercise routine, and that's really honestly how I started it. I think I was divinely led to yoga because I wanted it as an exercise, and it allowed me to open up to a lot of new ideas as well. And what yoga can do is it can create more embodiment, more processing of the emotions through the body. I've witnessed and I've participated in yoga classes where people are in tears and they're releasing, stuck energy, stuck bound emotion, whatever it is, from their bodies. So yoga is a great place, especially if you find yourself to be someone who stores emotion, like that you tighten up your jaw or your neck or your chest or your stomach, or that you store stress somewhere in the body, yoga might be a way to unwind and let some of that energy move through. It's also a way of slowing down and connecting to your body, which a lot of us, one of the biggest things, and I experienced this myself, was when we disconnect from spirituality, from our heart, from our emotions, we often also disconnect from the body, because the body and the emotions are very closely intertwined. Another access portal is your mind, is opening up your mind to new ideas. There are a few books that have made a huge impact on me and the way that I perceive the world, the way I understand the world, a lot around quantum physics and the relationship between quantum physics and consciousness. One of those books is called The Holographic Universe by Michael Talbot. And I was led to that book by a book called Busting Loose from the Money Game, which is not the greatest title, and wait till you see the cover, but it's such a good book. I highly recommend it, and I actually have a whole video about it. So when you're done with this video, go ahead and check out the notes below. There's a link to the video review that I did of Rob Scheinfeld's book, Busting Loose from the Money Game. And then another book that really, really changed the way I see the world, and it's very much rooted in science and research, is called The Field by Lynn McTaggart. I highly recommend that book. And now a little bit of a controversial strategy access portal, something called entheogens. Entheogens are substances. Some people call them medicines, some call them hallucinogenics or psychedelics, but there are certain substances that can give people the feeling of knowing or connecting to the divine. One of those substances, you've probably heard about it, it's called ayahuasca. It's from South America, generally from the Peru area. Those Indians there, they've been using that technology, so to speak, for centuries, for millennia, to help people have awakenings, spiritual awakenings. Another entheogen is called DMT, dimethyltryptamine, and DMT is really interesting as an entheogen because it is the only of these substances that is actually produced inside the body. Yes, it's endogenous, which is very crazy if you think about it, that we would have in our body already a substance that creates these types of experiences. And actually, the substance is produced by the pineal gland, which is deep in the brain. And DMT is actually one of the components in ayahuasca. Another substance that people have used to great effect to have divine experiences, to have more spiritual connection, is psilocybin, which is found in mushrooms, certain mushrooms. So these products, a lot of times I'm very careful to recommend these types of things because I know people use them recreationally. And I think that that's something that, when you use it recreationally, you're probably not going to have a spiritual awakening. Maybe you will. I don't know, actually. But I think it's very important to be very mindful and intentional about the setting, how you do these things, finding maybe a shaman or a medicine person or a guide, a mentor, somebody that you really trust who can help guide you through the experience and help you integrate the experience, because sometimes they can be pretty uncomfortable. Another thing I recommend in Access Portal is to find yourself a community of like-minded individuals who are on a similar journey, who are looking for that awakening, who are already awakened and looking to increase that or elevate that even more. People doing this work together can support each other and actually help each other have breakthroughs. When somebody has an experience, you can vicariously have that experience with them. Number 8, Access Portal is sound. I know that might sound strange, but what I've discovered is that sound in a lot of different ways is very connected to spirituality. Now, there are some of the obvious ways, for example, sound, i.e. sound bowls and sound healings and musical instruments can start to elevate emotions and help us connect to our heart, help us connect to what's beyond. And also the sounds in our own bodies, the sounds that our throat wants to make, the screams, the cries, the growls and the grunts to connect to the primal. So much of our civilization, our civilized way of being is about silencing sound. And it's such a big part, I think, of connecting to what's beyond. Just to give you a sense, an idea, there's new research that shows that, for example, the egg in a woman's body, that the way that the sperm finds the egg is through sound. It's an acoustic signal that the egg sends out. There's so much around sound that's being discovered now as a wave encoder of information that moves through the quantum field of consciousness and our current everyday reality. I know it sounds super woo-woo, but go look into it yourself. And then finally, another access point is heart coherence. Now, I'm not going to talk all about what heart coherence is. You can learn about it from the Heart Math Institute. But essentially, it's about bringing your heart into alignment with your emotions, with your mind, with your brain waves, and bringing everything into coherence so that the heart signal that you send out, which is a real thing, by the way, we can measure it with instruments, so that that heart signal that you send out is a coherent signal. Coherent signals attract, coherent signals uplift and elevate, whereas incoherence creates disturbances and wobbliness in the field. So working on your own heart coherence, getting in touch with your emotions and elevating those emotions is another access point to greater spirituality. If you're looking to bring some of these principles into your coaching, speaking, or consulting business and looking at how you can create a business that's more aligned with who you are and how you really want to feel and live, let's connect. You can find me at superstardiscoverycall.com.